The world of Fallout 4 is an extraordinary narrative machine, rich in carefully crafted and interconnected dialogues. So much so that, at times, the developer's attention to detail can lead to gameplay choices and solutions so hidden and unusual that most players never encounter them. Today, we'll take a look at some of these unusual secret choices that you may never have been aware of. A little used initial route. Most players who start Fallout 4 follow a very regular route. First, you meet Dogmeat, your faithful canine companion. Then you reach Diamond City, where Ellie will entrust you with the quest to find Nick Valentine, who went missing during one of his investigations. If, on the other hand, we head straight to Vault 114, we can save Nick, who is trapped inside the shelter by the henchmen of a local gangster. Once the related mission is complete, if we haven't already met him, Nick will use his dog whistle to call Dogmeat, who can then be recruited as a companion.
He'll pick it up. Okay, I called him.
Furthermore, following this course of events, Nick himself will show us how to reach Diamond City, and once there, the Jewel of the Commonwealth quest will be automatically completed. We will also have access to a series of alternative dialogues from many of the characters we would have met at the entrance to the city. Still on the subject of Diamond City, a little secret within the city is the possibility of going to the Memory Den before meeting Nick Valentine. In this case, Irma, the owner of the place, will initially refuse to let the player use the machine to relive their memories. However, it will be possible to convince her through diplomacy or by paying the appropriate amount. In this case, we will be able to immediately access our memories of the day of Sean's kidnapping, but these will be momentarily very dark and indistinct. However, it will still be an interesting experience for the player, as we will be able to hear several unused comments from the protagonist about what is happening. Once you have tracked down the private detective and returned with him to the Memory Den, you will be able to relive the experience more clearly, and thus move forward with the main quest. Infiltrating the Pridwain. During the quest, Rocket's Red Glare, the railroad will entrust us with the difficult task of boarding the Pridwain, the Brotherhood of Steel's large war airship, and planting bombs with the aim of blowing it up and putting an end to the danger posed by the organization to the Commonwealth. Normally, this mission would offer two courses of action. The first is a completely stealth mission. By using your skills and a good number of stealth boys, you can complete your task without ever being detected. This will allow you to enter and exit the airship quickly and complete the quest without firing a single shot. The second is a full-on assault, usually the option most players choose. Rifle in hand, you can make your way through the flying base with bullets, laser beams, and any other weapon at your disposal. In this case, you will probably find yourself facing the entire military force of the Brotherhood on board, but you will also be able to battle Elder Maxon and recover his unique equipment. However, there is a third option that most players are unlikely to ever know about. In fact, if you have not completed the Shadow of Steel mission, you can approach the quest as a real infiltration mission. By wearing a BOS uniform before boarding the vertibird that will take you aboard the Pridwain, you can enter the area without being recognized as an enemy. Most members of the Brotherhood will ignore the player, mistaking them for a fellow faction member. The only ones who will try to stop you will be the leaders of the Brotherhood, who will investigate your identity further, and must therefore be tricked in order to proceed undisturbed with the sabotage. This will unlock unique game dialogues, and once the bombs have been placed, you will be able to listen to a new commentary interaction as you escape with the vertibird. Recruit Dr. Scara to the Brotherhood of Steel. During the Brotherhood of Steel main quest, from within, Elder Maxon will instruct the player to contact Dr. Madison Lee, a former Brotherhood collaborator in the development of Liberty Prime who is currently working for the Institute. The goal of the quest will be to convince her to change factions again and rejoin the Brotherhood to help them with the new technologies they have acquired, and in particular, with the reconstruction of the giant robot. The mission will prove rather difficult, as the Doctor will be reluctant to leave the Institute, and the only feasible options will be to convince her through dialogue, or by finding evidence of what really happened to her friend and colleague, Brian Virgil, who disappeared into thin air, probably at the hands of the father of the Institute. Once the documents are found, the Doctor will be persuaded to leave the research center and return to the Brotherhood. However, there is another, less common possibility. If you decide to kill Dr. Lee before you can persuade her, once you return to Elder Maxon, he will harshly reprimand you for your decision and order you to find a viable alternative to the scientist. This alternative will be Professor Scala, a brilliant self-taught engineer residing in Diamond City. The woman can be found in the General Atomic Tunnel, and after some dialogue and saving her from the aggression of the robots present on site, the scientist will agree to take on the task, replacing Dr. Lee in every way in conducting research on behalf of the Brotherhood. A perk with a secret quality. Now let's move on to a choice that often goes unnoticed, but will prove very useful in combat. Among the perks that can be obtained by advancing in level is Penetrator, which allows you to maintain accuracy when using Vitesse to try to hit parts of the target hidden by cover. This ability is already quite good, but it is often overlooked by players in favor of other, much more valuable ones. What many don't know, however, is that this perk hides much more than its description indicates. In fact, according to Fallout's combat mechanics, not only scenery objects are considered cover, but also armor and reinforcements worn by NPCs. This means that Penetrator allows the player to directly attack the weak points of mobs wearing armor, or any type of armor plating. For example, it will be possible to directly hit air lurks, ignoring the resistance of their shells, or target the combat inhibitor inside various robots. Similarly, you can quickly get rid of enemies wearing power armor by aiming directly at their fusion cores, blowing them up with just a few shots. A secret ending for the Silver Shroud. The Silver Shroud was the protagonist of a series of thriller stories broadcast on the radio, a cynical and unstoppable avenger who always fought on the side of the weak and oppressed. During the course of the related quest, thanks to radio technician Kent Connolly, we will have the opportunity to recover the Silver Shroud costume and carry out some missions under his identity. However, this will attract the wrath of a small mob boss, Sinjin, who will kidnap Kent with the aim of forcing us out into the open. Once we arrive at his lair, we will find him and his gang ready to welcome us, with the man's gun already pointed at Kent's head. As usual, there will be two options. Either we can get away with a good display of charisma, convincing the criminal to let our friend go, or we can act as the Silver Shroud would and take out our enemies and then free our friend anyway. However, there is also a third, not exactly heroic option. If, as soon as we enter the ambush area, we decide to shoot and kill Kent instead of Sinjin, optional dialogue lines will open up from the bandits. At that point, we will have to face Sinjin alone, as his henchmen are too frightened of the protagonist. Once their boss is taken out, the criminals will say they are willing to surrender, discouraged by our display of violence and extreme cruelty.
Jesus! He's crazier than Sinjin!
What the?
Secret alternatives in the Cabot quest. The Cabot quest is one of the most interesting optional missions in the game, but there are some variables that the developers give us no clue about, which we will be able to explore with a little luck. One of the first tasks we will have to complete on behalf of Jack Cabot is to rescue his sister Imogene, who has joined a kind of cult called the Pillars of Community. Normally, we can find her at the Charles View Amphitheater, where she has been locked in a room by her lover, Brother Thomas, the leader of the cult. Here, it will be extremely difficult to convince the man to let her go. Alternatively, we will have to engage in battle with the entire cult, resulting in classic Fallout carnage. But as usual, there is a third option. If we have already visited the amphitheater before receiving the quest, we will notice that the leader is not Brother Thomas, but a certain Brother Simon. After talking to the man and proceeding to exterminate the cult in this case as well, once the mission to rescue Imogene has begun, it will be much easier to convince Brother Thomas to let her go with diplomacy, pointing out that you have already destroyed the cult once, and that you would have no problem doing so again. Continuing with the Cabot family quests, you will discover the dark secret held by the family. The patriarch, Lorenzo, once a famous archaeologist, had been somehow brainwashed by a mysterious ancient artifact of unknown origin. The object had shaped his body, turning him into a Superman, but it had also influenced his mind, corrupting it. Once we reach the containment chamber, where Jack kept his father locked up in the hope of finding a way to bring him to his senses and detach him from the artifact, we will have choices. The first is to free Lorenzo, who will guarantee us great rewards in return once he has taken revenge on the family. The other is to carry out Jack's request and eliminate his father, now too powerful and insane to be saved. In any case, if we decide to wait and not make a choice, Jack will warn us that his father's psychic power will soon have grown enough for him to free himself, and will urge us to hurry up and kill him while we still can. If we persist in doing nothing, the man's words will come true, and Lorenzo will manage to blow up the reinforced door of his prison, resulting in a confrontation that will prove even more difficult than it would have been if we had acted immediately. Finally, one last detail. If we manage to kill Lorenzo, Jack will ask us in return to come back and see him in a week's time. During that time, the scientist will have the opportunity to study the artifact previously connected to his father and use it to produce a weapon to give to the player. However, if we take too long to return, something unexpected will happen. We will find ourselves face to face with an extremely aged Jack and Imogene. The Cabot family members used a serum extracted from their father's blood to achieve long life and eternal youth. Once deprived of this sustenance, the family aged suddenly, and their mother even died. If we reach this point, it will no longer be possible to retrieve the special weapon Jack promised us. The easiest way to defeat the Machinist. The Machinist is the main enemy in the Fallout 4 Automatron DLC. The dungeon that leads to him is a veritable hell filled with heavily armored robots that are extremely difficult to take down and armed to the teeth. Going down inside means entering a storm of bullets, spinning blades, and flamethrowers. But for those who are particularly attentive and good at observing, there is an alternative way to reach him that will save us a lot of ammunition and stress. Inside his lair, we will find a terminal connected to an elevator. Normally, this would be a typical hacking challenge that would allow us to access the elevator. But this time, the terminal will respond that special permissions are required to proceed with the operation. We will then notice that there are holotapes around the dungeon with messages recorded by the scientists, each containing instructions for locating the missing recordings. Once we have recovered them all, with no small amount of difficulty, instead of proceeding to the final battle room with the boss, we can choose to go all the way back to the blocked elevator. Here, we will load the holotapes into the terminal, which will analyze the voice tracks and give us access to the elevator. This will allow us to reach the bottom of the building and gain direct access to the Machinist's final room. The character will say he is greatly surprised by our ability to bypass the best of pre-war computerized security, and will say he is willing to talk to us amicably. This will allow us to skip the entire final battle phase against the Machinist and its army of killer robots, saving Theodore's life. Theodore Collins is certainly one of the most despicable characters we encounter in Fallout 4. During his quest, he asks us to get rid of some giant rats that are infesting his slaughterhouse, where he produces canned meat for distribution throughout the Commonwealth. However, upon further exploration of the area, we make a disturbing discovery. In fact, the meat Theodore uses for his products is not normal, but rather ghoul meat. Once his disgusting secret is discovered, the man will hide in the factory control room, where we will have to take out several robots before we can reach him. At that point, given the slimy nature of the individual, most players opt to take him out without waiting a second longer. However, if we corner Theodore sufficiently, the man will stop attacking us and instead offer us a deal: his life in exchange for a constant percentage of his company's earnings. This may not be an entirely ethical choice, but if we agree to the proposal, we can collect up to 100 caps from the man every few days. Helping Travis. Travis Miles is a secondary character in Diamond City who is responsible for choosing the music to play on the city radio station. Although he is extremely indecisive and fearful, his knowledge of music could make him a great radio host. So we will have the opportunity to follow a quest to help him increase his self-confidence. By encouraging him to pick a fight with some bandits, we can steer the fight in such a way that the boy wins and gets the emotional boost he needs. This will lead us to successfully complete the mission and make Travis the official DJ of Diamond City Radio. However, during the fight, we'll have to be careful not to let Travis's health drop too low, otherwise one of the bandits will knock him out, causing us to fail the mission. In that case, the boy will say he's discouraged, but that he expected it to end that way. Deprived of this moral support, Travis will simply continue to choose music for the radio without ever becoming its official voice. The less traveled route is that of Travis's accidental death during the mission. If this event occurs, curiously, it will be Shen Kowalski, the little water fountain attendant, who will become the new radio DJ instead of Travis. However, the boy will clearly show little interest in music and will prefer to advertise his water bottle business instead. Special dialogues. Finally, let's take a look at a series of alternative dialogues that we can access if we follow less conventional paths as we progress through our quests. Codsworth is the handyman who worked for the protagonist's family before the bombs fell. When we wake up, he will be the first NPC we can talk to, discovering that the poor robot, who survived the attack, has spent the last 200 years following his classic work routine and trying to preserve as far as possible the house and neighborhood from the decay of the passing of time. When we talk to him, the robot will be dismayed by the misfortunes that have befallen his family and will ask to follow the player on their quest to find their lost son. If, on the other hand, we avoid talking to him and proceed with the story until we discover the truth about Sean and his fate since he was kidnapped from the vault. The robot will be much colder on the subject, commenting instead on his confusion about what his mission towards the family should be from that moment on. This is not exactly an alternative line of dialogue, but more of a particular interaction involving Dogmeat and the Brotherhood of Steel. If we have our faithful canine companion with us when we undertake the quests on behalf of the Brotherhood, we will have the opportunity to witness an amusing exchange. In fact, when we gather with the other members of the group in the presence of Elder Maxon, just before he begins his speech, the man will give the typical Brotherhood salute, and Dogmeat will react by standing on his hind legs as if to respond to the man. This is a unique scene for Dogmeat, and no other companion will have any particular reactions in his place. Near the South Boston Police Precinct, we will meet an NPC named Parker Quinn. The man will offer to sell us an item that, according to him, is technologically advanced and extremely useful: a charge card. Nothing more and nothing less than something similar to a credit card, which, for the cost of 110 caps, would allow us to make purchases throughout the Commonwealth without having to carry around all those caps. Of course, this is the most classic of scams. However, owning the charge card will open up new lines of dialogue with most of the merchants with whom we try to use it. Obviously, none of them will be willing to accept the card as a method of payment. At least none except Brooks, a merchant in Far Harbor, who will agree to take the card in exchange for a refund of the caps spent to purchase it. The castle, also known as Fort Independence, is a Minutemen stronghold that, many years before the story of Fallout 4, was abandoned due to a massive Mirelurk attack that invaded the structure. During this faction's main quest, we will have the opportunity to lead a group of Minutemen to recapture the fortress. This will prove to be quite a difficult task given the large number of monsters that will continuously spawn from their nests, not to mention the final appearance of a Mirelurk Queen, one of the most terrifying monsters to deal with in the world of Fallout. In any case, if we are unlucky enough to come across the place before starting the quest, we can still try to rid the area of the sea beasts on our own initiative, but, of course, without the support of the Minutemen. If we succeed in clearing the fort, once Preston Garvey offers us the corresponding quest, we will be treated to some amusing alternative dialogue in which he expresses his amazement at the feat we have accomplished on our own. We can obtain another short secret dialogue at the General Atomics headquarters. As always, the place will be full of robots that only appear to be peaceful, but are ready to try to kill us as soon as they discover that we are not part of the staff. However, as long as we don't disturb them, we can explore the area and enter the bowling alley. Here we will find a Mr. Handy named Tenpin standing at the cash register, who will offer us a game for the modest sum of $5,000. Of course, the robot is not referring to the current currency in caps, but to the old pre-war currency. At this point, most players decide to trick the unsuspecting NPC with a persuasion check, but we will actually have the crazy choice of gathering the required amount around the game world. If we opt for this choice, we can return to Tenpin and hand him the loot. However, once the robot has collected the money, it will inform us that the machines are currently shut down due to a technical fault, but that as soon as the maintenance technician arrives to repair the damage, it will start our game. Needless to say, the maintenance technician will never arrive, and we will simply have been deprived of a large sum of money. Finally, still talking about the Minutemen faction, even though this prevents us from advancing in the game, we will still have the option to ignore them for most of our run. When we go to their rescue at the Museum of Freedom in Concord, Sturgis, a member of the faction, will normally assign us the quest to recover a fusion core to reactivate the power armor in the building and get a chance to defeat the gunners who are besieging the place. However, if we show up to the man already in possession of power armor equipped with a minigun, the NPC will be very disappointed that his carefully planned course of action has ultimately proved useless. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the most disturbing secrets in Fallout, click the video on screen now.